4 fragrance formulas, still sitting in bathroom cabinets and department store shelves right now, contain ingredients regulators have spent the last 2 decades restricting, reformulating, or banning outright. Public consensus treats fragrance as one of the safest categories in the entire beauty industry, lightly regulated, broadly tested, sold without a second thought. For most people, most of the time, that reputation holds up. But regulatory filings tell a more complicated story. As of 2023, European regulators expanded the mandatory fragrance allergen disclosure list from 26 substances to more than 80. A signal that the list of ingredients considered risky for sensitized skin has more than tripled in scope. Some of those ingredients built entire perfume categories that are still being worn today. This video breaks down 4 categories of fragrance formulation that regulatory bodies have specifically flagged, restricted, or banned over the past 20 years, using public regulatory filings from the International Fragrance Association and the European Union, and explains what that actually means for anyone still wearing them.
Start with one of perfumery's most historically significant ingredients, oak moss. For most of the 20th century, Oakmoss Absolute was the backbone of an entire fragrance family known as chypre, warm, mossy, sophisticated formulas that define some of the most iconic releases in perfume history. Myth: oak moss itself is dangerous and has been banned. Reality: regulatory filings show the material isn't prohibited, it's restricted, and specifically because of 2 components within it: atronol and chloroatronol, identified as potent skin sensitizers capable of triggering allergic contact dermatitis in a meaningful share of users. Public IFRA standards cap combined oak moss and tree moss content at 1,000 parts per million in finished product, and require the allergenic components to be reduced before use. Here's the detail most consumers never see. Oak moss has required allergen disclosure on European cosmetic labels since 2003. That means for over 2 decades, any fragrance containing it above a minimal threshold has been legally required to say so on the box. A warning sitting in plain sight, in text small enough that almost nobody reads it before buying. The second category closes a different open loop.
What happens when a regulator doesn't just restrict an ingredient, but removes it entirely? Lyral, a synthetic compound responsible for the crisp, green lily-of-the-valley note found in countless florals since the 1960s, was formally prohibited for use in EU cosmetic products under Commission Regulation 2017-1410. Public regulatory documentation cites Lyral as a confirmed skin sensitizer, meaning repeated exposure was shown to meaningfully increase the risk of allergic reaction over time in a documented share of users. Major fragrance houses were required to reformulate any
product containing it, replacing the note with alternative synthetic materials designed to approximate the same scent profile without the same sensitization data behind it. This is why fragrance enthusiast communities frequently discuss the difference between vintage and modern formulations of the same named perfume. It isn't nostalgia or marketing. In cases involving ingredients like Lyral, the chemical composition of the product actually changed, sometimes significantly, in direct response to a regulatory finding about skin safety. The third category involves an ingredient that disappeared from the market with far less public attention than its history might suggest. Musk ambrette, a synthetic musk once common in fragrance formulas for its warm, sweet, skin-like base note, was prohibited from use as a fragrance ingredient by IFRA in 2006. Public toxicological data behind that prohibition pointed to 2 separate concerns: documented photosensitization, where the compound reacted with UV exposure to cause skin irritation, and findings suggesting potential neurotoxic effects at certain exposure levels. Fragrance formulation communities have tracked this ingredient closely because, unlike oak moss, it wasn't merely restricted to a use threshold, it was removed from the approved materials list entirely. Here's the loop this chapter leaves open. IFRA prohibitions apply to member companies, the vast majority of major fragrance houses globally, since compliance is often required for liability and insurance reasons.
But IFRA membership isn't a matter of law in every market. That gap is precisely where formulations synthesized outside major regulatory frameworks can still legally contain prohibited materials, particularly in regions with looser cosmetic oversight. This brings the investigation to the most recent regulatory shift, and the one with the broadest reach. Commission Regulation 2023/1545, which entered into force in August 2023, expanded the European Union's mandatory fragrance allergen disclosure list from 26 substances to more than 80, with a transition period running through mid-2026 for full market compliance. That expansion is
Cosmetic. Public regulatory guidance shows the new list was built specifically to capture materials with documented sensitization potential that weren't previously required to appear on packaging at all, meaning fragrances legally sold as hypoallergenic or marketed without any listed concerns may, under the new rules, be required to disclose allergen content that manufacturers were never previously obligated to reveal. And this is where the fourth category becomes the most consequential rather than the most dramatic. It isn't one specific formula. It's any fragrance containing the newly added allergens at concentrations above the disclosure threshold, a category public estimates suggest could include a significant share of fragrances currently sold, given how common several of these compounds are across mainstream formulations. So the headline needs a precise correction. This isn't a story about 4 specific perfumes to throw away in a panic. It's a story about 4 categories of ingredients: Oakmoss's allergenic components, banned Lyral, prohibited Musk ambrette, and the newly expanded allergen list that regulators have identified as meaningful risk factors, specifically for people with sensitized or reactive skin, not universally dangerous for every wearer. A few structural takeaways hold up across the data for anyone navigating this. Anyone with a documented fragrance allergy or history of contact dermatitis has a specific, practical reason to check ingredient labels against the current EU allergen list before buying. A bottle purchased years ago may be chemically different from the same named bottle sold today, since reformulation in response to regulation is common and rarely advertised. And for most wearers without diagnosed sensitivities, public toxicological consensus does not support blanket avoidance. It supports informed, label-aware purchasing. Once the actual regulatory history is laid out this plainly, the real question isn't which 4 perfumes to throw away. It's why an industry required by law to disclose these ingredients still counts on almost nobody reading the label closely enough to notice.